I never imagined that that weekend would be something more than a simple trip with friends. It was an isolated, quiet country house, and we were all excited to escape the routine. Me, Lucas, and the rest of the group spent our days between laughter and beers, enjoying the sun and the landscape. But soon, something started to get weird with Lucas. At first, it seemed like just a change of mood, but soon I realized that he was watching me in an uncomfortable way. He was always close, always watching. I tried to ignore it, but one day when I returned to my room, I noticed that some things were out of place. My cell phone, which I had left on the table, was now turned over, and my backpack seemed to have been moved. When I started looking more closely, I noticed something even stranger, a diary. It was hidden at the bottom of my backpack, between crumpled clothes, and its pages were full of notes and drawings. At first, I thought it was something innocent, but when I read it, my stomach turned. The diary was full of obsessive thoughts about me, talking about every move I made, describing things that no one could know, as if he was constantly watching me. The most disturbing were the drawings, dark and disturbing figures with my eyes, with my face. The feeling of being watched, which before I thought was just an impression, now seemed to have a real weight. When I confronted Lucas, he denied everything. He tried to convince me that I was imagining things, but his look, that look gave me chills. Something wasn't right, and I knew I had to take action. That night, I could barely sleep. Lucas' behavior became increasingly strange. He began to act aggressively, and there was something disturbing about the way he looked at me. I had the feeling that he was getting too close to me, as if he expected some reaction from me. I couldn't understand what was happening, but the pressure was suffocating me. I tried to talk to the other friends, ask for help, but no one seemed to believe me. They thought I was exaggerating, that maybe the heat was making me paranoid. So that morning something happened. I woke up with a noise coming from the corridor, and when I went there, I found Lucas standing at the door of my room, staring at me. He didn't say anything, he just stayed there in silence. It was as if he was expecting something, but I didn't know what. The confrontation that followed was tense. I tried to force a conversation, but he refused to talk about the diary or what was happening. His words began to get more threatening, and the tension between the two of us grew rapidly. I knew that if I didn't act, it could end very badly. At that moment, I had a feeling of absolute fear, as if he was able to do something without any remorse. The worst thing was that when I finally managed to get away, I realized that he was still watching me, as if it wasn't just what he was doing, but an obsession that had grown inside him, a need to control myself, to possess myself. I walked away from him that night, but something inside me knew that it wouldn't end there. Something dark was still to come. In the following days, Lucas' behavior became even more erratic. He began to spend more time alone, locked in the room, and became more and more distant, as if he had lost all interest in the group's activities. But the worst was yet to come. One afternoon, while everyone was gathered in the living room, Lucas approached me calmly, almost whispering, "I knew you were going to find out." He didn't look the same anymore, his eyes were empty, and his voice had a low and threatening tone. I tried to stay calm, but fear took over me. He was no longer the Lucas I knew, he no longer seemed to be my friend. What I felt was something even deeper, something that seemed to accompany me, to haunt me like a shadow. I knew something very wrong was happening. I didn't want to stay in that house anymore. I decided it was time to go home, but the others insisted that everything was fine, that I was exaggerating. So that night, I took my things and left alone, without saying anything. But on the way back, I couldn't get rid of the feeling that Lucas was following me. I looked through the rearview mirror, and for a moment, I thought I saw him behind me. My heart raced. Fear didn't leave me alone, even for a second. What happened to him? Why was he so obsessed? What was in those pages of the diary that made me feel this distressing sense of danger? When I got home, everything seemed calmer, but the feeling of dread was still with me. I tried to move on, but I couldn't forget Lucas' look, nor what he had said. That empty look, the obsession, and the words he whispered. I didn't know what was happening to him, but I felt that the worst was yet to come. Years have passed, but the memory of that trip and Lucas' behavior never left me. I tried to move on with my life, but the nightmare came back in a way I didn't expect. One day, years after the incident, I received an anonymous letter. It was a simple letter, without sender, only with a few scribbled words, accompanied by a drawing. The drawing was the same one I had seen in Lucas' diary. A distorted figure, with empty eyes, watching me, always watching me. The letter only said, "I never left. I'll wait for you." I felt the blood freeze. I didn't know if the letter was a joke from someone who knew what happened, or if it was a real threat. But one thing was certain. Whatever had happened on that trip, Lucas demons, or whatever it was, were still lurking, waiting for the right time to manifest themselves again. Now, older and more cautious, I can't forget that feeling, as if I were being hunted. I try to block these memories, but this letter, she brought up something I still can't understand. If Lucas was so obsessed with me, did he know anything else? Did he somehow still chase me? Or would it be something even darker and inexplicable that will never be fully revealed? The answer seems to be just out of reach, like a shadow that follows me. And you, have you ever been through something like this? Have you ever felt that you were being followed by someone, even without explanation? What do you think was happening to Lucas? I never thought that something as simple as an excursion with my family in an isolated forest could turn into a nightmare. It was a tradition of ours, a weekend trip that always took place in a small town in Maine. This year, as always, we were playing flag capture, a child's game, but something was different that afternoon. I was moving away from the group, trying to catch a flag of the opposite team, when I started to hear something strange, like footsteps, but when I looked around, I didn't see anyone. I thought it could be some animal, but the sound was too clear, as if someone was trying to follow me. I kept walking, trying to ignore the noises, but soon I noticed traces on the floor, something that didn't make sense. Drag marks that seemed to have been made by something or someone weighing a lot, but without obvious explanation. I stopped and looked around, hoping to see someone, but nothing. No person, no sound other than my own steps and the wind in the trees. I went back to where the others were, feeling a strange restlessness. They didn't notice anything abnormal, but I couldn't get the feeling of being watched out of my head. When everyone got together to continue the game, I tried to put aside the strange feeling, and made aside that everything was normal. The next day, when I woke up, the feeling of discomfort was still with me, as if something had happened, but I couldn't explain it. As if the night had been watched by something that didn't belong there. I went to check my things and, to my surprise, I found something I hadn't put in my sleeping bag, a keychain. It was a simple keychain, but I had never seen it before. There was no reason for him to be there, especially after we had all searched the items the night before to make sure nothing was out of place. I asked everyone to check, but no one had seen that keychain, not even me. I was confused and a little paranoid. How would he have ended up there? No one else seemed to understand the weight of that, but I knew something was wrong. Something or someone had been watching all of us last night, and I couldn't help but think about what could have been. The feeling of being watched was consuming me. But the strangest thing is that no one else seemed to have noticed anything unusual. No one else felt what I was feeling. And soon that keychain, the only indication of something strange, ended up becoming the center of my obsession. That night, I went back to the forest alone, determined to look for more clues. I wanted to understand what had happened, why that mysterious keychain had appeared, and what I had actually heard in those hours I spent alone. As I walked, the silence seemed even deeper. There was nothing, no animal sound, no wind. Just the echo of my breath. I arrived at the place where I had found the marks the night before. But what I found now was even more disturbing. A line of marks that seemed to move, as if something had followed my path exactly as I had done it, but in an even faster, more stealthy way. In an impulse, I ran back to the camp. When I arrived, everyone was gathered around the campfire, smiling and laughing, as if nothing strange had happened. I didn't know what else to believe. I stood there, without the courage to tell what I had found, but the feeling of being watched has never left me since that moment. Until today, I never knew who or what was really there in the forest that night. Have you ever experienced something that left you with the feeling of being watched without explanation? What do you think it could have been? We went to the country house in the mountains of Colorado for a quiet weekend. A group of friends, eager to escape the routine and enjoy the peace of an isolated place. We arrived and, at first glance, the house seemed to be the perfect refuge. From wooden walls and large windows overlooking the snow-covered mountains, the place had that rustic charm. After we packed things up, we had a small meal, drank some wine and started talking, laughing about the simple things in life. It seemed like a night like any other, until something strange started to happen. It all started with steps. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then, when the steps were repeated, I became more attentive. It didn't seem to be the sound of some animal. It was much heavier and more intentional. I looked out the window, but I didn't see anyone. I laughed at my friends, trying to push away the uncomfortable feeling, but when we went to the door, we heard a light touch, as if someone was knocking outside. I called everyone to investigate, and as we left, I realized that the lights in the house were starting to flash. We went towards the door, and when I looked at the front window, I noticed something that made me stop suddenly. There was someone there watching us, standing still but without movement. We decided to investigate, and I won't lie, the feeling of being watched didn't leave me alone. We went outside the house, but there was no one. The trees were as quiet as the house, and everything seemed normal, except for a strange sensation in the air. The friends started laughing, trying to relieve the tension, but I couldn't get rid of the idea that something was wrong. We tried to get back to the routine and continue at night, but the sounds continued, now more frequent, and every time someone moved away from the house, the steps seemed to go closer. The strangest moment came when we decided to call the police. One of us picked up the phone, called the emergency, but the signal was abruptly cut off. The line became meek, as if no one was on the other side, and before we could make another attempt, the light in the main room flashed again and went out for good. We went to the room to look for flashlights and something to light up the house, but I couldn't help but notice that each of us seemed to feel the same chill. Something was there, watching. I began to question if we were really alone, or if the place had some kind of presence or story that I preferred to be hidden. In the room, everyone was trying to calm down, but the windows were so gloomy, and the curtains moved as if something or someone was outside. We tried to call the police again, but the phone didn't work anymore, as if it had been sabotaged. Silence took over the house, and we all got more tense with each passing minute. The light on the balcony flashed intermittently, and the sound of something scraping at the door made us run to it, but there was no one. The feeling that we were being observed intensified. Finally, we got together and decided it was time to leave, regardless of what was happening. When I opened the door, something caught my attention. Outside, the snow that covered the floor had been altered, and there was something written there. "You should never come back." The message was in large letters, almost with a force that seemed to emanate from the earth under it. We couldn't understand. Who would have done that? How could someone write in the snow so precisely, without leaving traces? Fear paralyzed us, and at that moment, the desire to leave was greater than anything. But the feeling that the danger was there, at our door, was real. Now, what do you think you would do in this situation? Have you ever imagined in a situation like this?